So tell me, how did you get the whole idea of math journaling started with your class this year?
Okay, well, what I did was I started right off the bat. So you can see here on August 18th, that very first week of school, the first math lesson that we did, I had them go ahead and pull this out, and we introduced it as a class. It was important for me to make sure that they understood how to set up a math journal. So on chart paper for multiple days, I would write journal and then put the empty square. So we all started out with journal 1, journal 2, journal 3, but then we quickly realized that when a student is absent, that we're not always on the same journal. So we can't rely on one another. We always have to go back and say, oh, I was absent one day, so my next journal entry is journal 5, but everyone else may be on 7.
Okay.
So we learned really quick that not all of us are gonna be on the exact same journal entry as our neighbors because of being gone or absent. And so we started out with journal entry and a number, and then we always write the date. And then under it, we started out by just putting a line. So they knew that was the title line, but they never really knew what the title should be because I hadn't introduced what we were putting into that journal entry. Okay. So as we do the journal entry, then they can look and see what kind of math we're doing, and I would allow them to make up their own title. Sometimes I would give them a title. It just depended on how I used the math journal.
So did you start off by giving, on those anchor charts, giving them examples of what would be good titles in the beginning?
I did. I was pretty lenient and flexible. I mean, that part was important, but it kind of gave them their ownership of their math journal and their page. So I tried not to make it that big a deal. And some of them, maybe just said adding instead of rolling math. Some of them got a little bit more fancy, but I tried not to make it that big a deal.
Sure.
So as the year went on, we continued to do them pretty much every single day. There's lots of different ways that we use the math journal. We use them as a resource tool. We use them for exploring things. We use them for practice. I'll put up a problem and they can just do a practice problem.
Okay.
I use them for an introduction. So if I'm introducing a new game or something, we will try it out in our journal. So it becomes second nature to them. So every time it's math workshop time, they just know to get out their math journal and fill it out. At this point, even second and third quarter, I wouldn't even write it up on the board. So they would just, if they didn't remember how to spell the word journal, then they had to thumb back and fill it out themselves.
So do you find that they go back to old entries?
They do. More for some than others, of course, but they absolutely use it as a resource. Yeah, they do. I would say they mostly use it for practice problems. I use it more as a practice tool and an exploratory tool. But I do have the kids who will go back and use it as a resource, just as I did today. We were talking about Cuisenaire rods, and one little boy could not remember what the brown one was, but he knew it was 8. He just couldn't remember the color. So he was like, "Oh, wait." And he flipped all the way back, and he knew it was at the very beginning of the school year, and he was like, "Oh, it's the brown one." So they do go back and use it as a tool.
Great.
So, we've used it all school year, and the kids, they rely on it. It does. It becomes second nature for them. But the key is to have that end in mind and know that when you start these, that the kids are going to rely on them, and it just is a routine to them. So I do use them every single day. I mean, some of my kids are on journal entry 80. Some of them are on 100. It just depends on if they're out of the class, in the class. So they're all on a different number. So.